He was supposed to walk through that airport gate with his arms wide open, the kind of embrace that erases time and distance, the kind that swallows you whole and makes you believe that nothing bad could ever happen in the world as long as you were in that moment. He was drowned by fear, by power, by betrayal. And in that moment, the world shattered into pieces, because this wasn't just a death anymore, it was a murder. And Twitter exploded in a way that only happens when the truth is too loud to ignore. Fans screamed into the void of the internet. Hashtags ignited like wildfire. And for the first time in years, silence was no longer an option, because Malcolm didn't just die, he was erased. They buried his body, but they couldn't bury the questions. Not from his mother, not from his daughter, not from the millions who grew up watching him, smiling, laughing, believing that he was one of the rare ones who would live forever in the way television immortality promises, because Malcolm-Jamal Warner wasn't supposed to die. Not like this. Not alone in a foreign country, not face down in a pool with no witnesses, no cameras and no answers. And now, it turns out, there may have been a reason the answers never came, because this week everything changed. An FBI informant, someone deep inside the system, leaked a file so explosive it sent shockwaves not just through Hollywood, but through Washington, through newsrooms, through every corner of the internet where people trade in truth, rumor, and the things too dangerous to say out loud. And this file contained text messages. Not just any messages, but messages sent from Bill Cosby's private phone, messages time-stamped exactly 4 hours before Malcolm was pronounced dead. One said, "It's happening." Another said, "Make sure he doesn't leave Costa Rica." And the last one said, "Handle it quietly." And there's no version of that where it's a coincidence. There's no innocent interpretation, because those aren't words of concern. They're words of command and sudit. Because the texts alone were enough to send chills down the spine of anyone reading them. But it's what came after, what those words set in motion, that has left an entire industry shaking. Because when the Warner family was informed about the leak, Malcolm's mother reportedly collapsed in her kitchen, her coffee spilling across the table as she gripped the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And according to an eyewitness, a neighbor who rushed over after hearing the commotion, Pamela screamed, "I knew it! I knew they were lying to me!" The kind of scream that tears at the air, the kind you can't fake, the kind born from years of gaslighting and dismissal, because for years she had begged, pleaded, for the autopsy report, for the hotel security footage, for the witness list, for anything that could help her understand how her son, a strong swimmer and an even stronger fighter, could end up dead in a pool in Costa Rica with no witnesses, no clear cause, and a coroner's report that seemed to shift like sand every time she got close to an answer. And every time she asked, she was told the same thing. It was just an accident. Let it go. They tried to silence her with that phrase, as if repeating it enough times would erase the knot in her chest. They called her delusional. They told her grief was making her imagine conspiracies where none existed, but she wasn't imagining anything. And now, the whole world knew it. And in a press conference outside her modest suburban home, Pamela Warner stood in front of a wall of microphones, holding up the printed FBI messages for the cameras, her hands visibly shaking but her eyes burning with something beyond grief, rage. And when she spoke, her voice cracked but never faltered. "My son loved Cosby. He trusted him. He defended him. Even when the world turned on him, my boy stood by him, and now I find out that same man may have planned my son's death." And then, looking directly into the cameras, into the eyes of millions watching live, she said the line that would echo across social media for weeks. "He didn't drown in that pool. He drowned in betrayal, in silence, in fear. And if you think I'm going to be quiet now, you've underestimated a mother." And within minutes, Asa Justice for Malcolm began trending worldwide, thousands of people reposting side-by-side images of Cosby and Malcolm, once celebrated as a father and son figure, now reframed as predator and prey. Influencers, activists, even former castmates began speaking out. The first cracks in the wall of silence, and one anonymous Cosby Show insider allegedly told an online journalist, "We always knew there was tension, but nobody thought it went that deep. Cosby always kept Malcolm close, almost too close, and if he ever spoke out, it would have been over for Cosby. And that was the twist no one saw coming. because according to multiple sources, Malcolm had been working on something, a secret project, maybe a memoir, maybe a docuseries, and it was going to be explosive. It was going to pull back the curtain on the darkest corners of the Cosby legacy, and he wasn't going to hold back. He had files, recordings, stories that no one had ever dared to tell. And then suddenly he was dead, and the dots began connecting faster than anyone could stop them. Because why Costa Rica? Why no camera footage at the hotel? Why did the coroner's report change 3 times in a week? Why did Cosby's legal team make a quiet trip to Costa Rica just days before Malcolm arrived? And most importantly, why did Malcolm call his mother 2 hours before he died, whispering, "If something happens to me, don't believe the news"? That voicemail was deleted from his phone, but Pamela had already recorded it, and now she was ready to play it in court. And while Cosby's camp had gone silent, no statements, no tweets, no carefully worded denials, that silence was deafening, louder than any confession, especially after a retired FBI agent went on an independent podcast and revealed that those messages had been flagged years ago but buried because, in his words, Cosby was untouchable. But not anymore, because at the vigil held outside Malcolm's childhood home, the truth became a rallying cry. People lit candles, held signs. One read, "He didn't drown." He was erased. Another read, "Cosby, your hands aren't clean." And a little girl no older than 10 stood with her mother, tears in her eyes, holding a photo of Malcolm from the Cosby Show, whispering, "I thought he was a good man. Why would he hurt Malcolm?" And there was no answer. Just a mother pulling her daughter close, trying to explain the unexplainable, the kind of world where heroes become monsters. And this was only the beginning, because the FBI file wasn't the only thing leaked. There was also a hidden hard drive, one that had belonged to Malcolm, one that contained voice memos, emails, and a personal letter addressed to his daughter, and that hard drive, FE. And while the world was still reeling from those first 3 leaked messages, still processing the fact that a man they had once called America's dad might have been the architect of something so cold, so deliberate, so final, Pamela Warner knew in her gut that this was only the surface, that the truth wasn't just in those 3 texts, but in the shadows they were pointing toward, in the hidden corners of contracts, bank transfers, witness statements, and NDAs signed in hotel rooms at 2 in the morning under the weight of fear. And so she didn't wait for the FBI to call her back, didn't wait for another press leak, didn't wait for the legal process to move at its snail's pace. She moved first. She opened the worn leather briefcase she had kept locked since the week Malcolm died, the one with the scratches on the handle from where her nails dug in during the funeral, and she spread its contents across her kitchen table. Photographs of the Costa Rican resort taken by a local photographer who accidentally deleted them from his memory card after being paid in cash. A printed manifest of flight crew members who were scheduled to work Malcolm's return flight but were mysteriously reassigned the day before. A folded napkin with a name scrawled in blue ink, a name she had never been able to connect to anyone until now. And a flash drive, silver, dented, the one she had been too afraid to plug into her computer for fear of what it might contain. But now there was no room for fear, because the world was finally listening. And when she clicked it open, her hands trembling so badly she had to steady the mouse with both palms, the screen filled with grainy, time-stamped footage, the kind that was never supposed to survive, security camera video from the pool area of the resort, and there he was, Malcolm, alive, moving, smiling at someone just outside the frame, until suddenly his expression changes, his body language shifts, he steps backward, hands raised in that defensive, half-joking way people do when they're trying to defuse something. But the other figure steps forward, fast, too fast for it to be anything casual, and the next thing she sees is water splashing, Malcolm's arms flailing, and then another set of hands holding him down under the surface, the splashing slowing, the fight fading. And even though the camera never catches the face in full, there's enough, a reflection in the water, a distinctive gold bracelet, a patterned shirt that matches one seen in photos from a private dinner Cosby had in Costa Rica that very week. And Pamela felt the kind of cold that doesn't just hit your skin, but sinks into your bones, because this wasn't just suspicion anymore, this was evidence. This was a murder caught on camera, and she realized in that moment that if she didn't release this, it would disappear the way so much had already disappeared. So she called the one person she knew had both the platform and the courage to burn every bridge necessary to tell the truth, Cat Williams. And when he answered, voice groggy but sharp, and she told him what she had, there was a pause, then a low whistle, then the words, Pamela, if we do this, there's no going back. And she said, I don't want to go back. And within 24 hours, Cat had set up a live stream, unannounced, unfiltered, where millions tuned in thinking maybe he was about to drop another comedy special, only to be blindsided by the raw, unedited pool footage playing on a loop while Pamela sat beside him, silent, staring into the camera like she was staring through time, and the internet imploded. Hashtags morphing into battle cries, celebrities posting black squares with Malcolm's name in bold white letters, lawyers calling live into news stations to offer representation pro bono, and Cosby's camp scrambling so hard that within hours there were cease and desist letters, copyright claims, and vague legal threats flooding every platform. But it was too late, because the footage had been downloaded, mirrored, and uploaded to servers in every time zone. And Pamela knew that for the first time since she had gotten the call that her son was found dead. The truth wasn't in the hands of those who wanted to bury it. It was in the hands of the people, and the people were angry, relentless, and unwilling to be silenced.